Well, good afternoon. Yes, a few people have watched my previous other videos about why I left the organisation and what happened during the fiasco that was Jehovah's Witnesses, me and music. And I'm not finished there really, because obviously there's a whole bundle of things that we could discuss that I used to believe in, which I still mull about in my head thinking, how in God's name did I believe that? You know, what free-thinking, logical person would swallow that story? And there's a lot of them, and I'll probably in due course try to go through as many as I can, things that really disturb me reading from the Bible, or things I was taught to do, which didn't make any sense. These are Bible things, and still don't make any sense. And it could, you know, there are a lot of aspects to cover. What I thought I'd do is make this the shortest video ever, because the last one was 2 hours long. If you lasted 2 hours watching that, well done. And the one before I think was an hour, but so we'll try and make this one a little bit shorter. But we'll deal with a big subject actually. Masturbation. Yes, we're going to talk about masturbation. Obviously you knew it was masturbation before you started playing the video. So obviously you must be interested in masturbation. Not really, but you understand the interest in what I'm going to say here. Now, why would somebody want to stick on a video about masturbation? You do get many things on YouTube, masturbation. The reason why I'm discussing it is because, of course, the organisation that I belong to like to stick their fingers, like to stick their noses into masturbation. Yes, we do know that, and that's why, you know, it's a bit of a sticky subject, but I still think that it's worth just talking about what the society's view was at that point, and I don't think it's changed much these days, and so it's still relevant today. And this is only my experience, albeit going back many years when I was younger, and other things moving on from that. So let's go back. Let's take you all back to when I was younger, when I was on about 16. I'm not about when the first time I masturbated. Oh my God, where would we go with that story? No, what took us back to when I was 16, right? 16 and 17, and at the time, the society had a book out. I hope it's been replaced. I hope it's been replaced since. It was called the Youth Book. What they used to have was, the only book they had for children at the time was called Listening to the Great Teacher. Listen to the Great Teacher. It was a sort of, it might be in purplish colour, I don't know, but it was a little bit younger, Listening to the Great Teacher. And then all of a sudden, this book came out called, I think, like Your Youth, Getting the Best Out of It. If I'm not mistaken, I may have the title wrong, I may have the colour wrong. I think it was red. I may be wrong, and I'm certainly not interested to go online to find out what colour it was, what the real title was. I'm not interested. So anyway, let's push on. So Listen to the Great Teacher. So, no, sorry, the Youth Book. We're back to the Youth Book. So in the Youth Book, I was studying the Youth Book with a guy called Malcolm Peers. He was the elder who looked after our group, I believe. And I quite like Malcolm Peers. Unbelievably, Malcolm's the only person I've ever met who actually was at Woodstock and not a performer. Yes, he was British. He'd moved over to Canada, I believe, to live, and then he'd gone. Oh, when he heard about Woodstock, he went with his wife to Woodstock, to the Woodstock Festival. And I've met people. I've spoken to artists who performed at Woodstock, such as members of the Big Brother and the Holding family, the guy out of Country Joe and the Fish, and also the guy who played the guitar in Joe Cocker's band. They were all at Woodstock, and I've spoken to them when I've met them in Scotland. But Mal was the only person that I know actually was at the festival, and I wish that I'd spent more time talking to him about Woodstock and growing from the 60s, because phenomenally, Mal came from Liverpool, and he was in the same class as members of the Beatles. It was either Lennon or McCartney he was in class with. George Harrison was younger than him, and he didn't know Ringo Starr because he was from Dingwall, something a different area of Liverpool. He did know Pete Best, and he did know Pete Best, who was the original drummer in the Beatles. He did know Pete Best's mother, Mona Best. And I used to go to the, I think it's called the Casbah Club, that the Beatles rehearsed in, which I think Mona Best ran along with a son. And anyways, only that's it. So, you know, interesting guy, but I wish I'd spent more time talking to him about the Beatles and Woodstock than talking about masturbation. But anyway, so obviously we're studying the youth book, and up comes masturbation. I don't know whether there's the chapter called masturbation, but anyway, it comes up. So anyway, let's see if I can remember what it said. Basically, the saying is, the society admits that nowhere at all in the Bible whatsoever, it is not either mentioned or alluded to or hinted at, is masturbation mentioned. Which you think is a bit odd, because if you think about this, the Mosaic law, you know, to deal with, like, you know, micromanaging the Jews' life at the time, it went into quite a bit of detail. It went into a lot of detail in relation, especially to a woman's period. Oh my God, there are so many instructions on what a woman must do when she takes her period. She's unclean, she's got to go here, she's got to go there, she can't touch this, she can't touch that, you can't touch the clothes. Oh my God, you know, lots and lots of things about a woman taking a period, but nothing about masturbation, which is a bit odd, because you would have thought that that many Jews, you know, the men and the women between like 14 and 21, or if they got married, I'm sure they must have been masturbating. You know, I'm sure it did exist back then. I'm sure masturbation is not a modern concept. And so going back in the time of 4,000 years ago, whatever it was, I'm sure they must have all been masturbating. But there's not a mention of it in the Mosaic law. Incredible. And then it came to the Christian Greek churches. They were dealing with things like, should we get circumcised? But nobody mentioned is, are we allowed to masturbate? Which is really, really odd, because I'm sure the first century Christians must have been doing it as well. So in other words, the point is, the Bible, which, you know, the Jehovah's Witnesses say, you know, is the most important book in the world, which you must base our life on, no mention of masturbation. So guess what? We know it happens, and we're going to write this youth book. So we've got to now somehow look at a scripture and try and misapply it to masturbation. It's never been mentioned at all. Nobody's mentioned it, but we're going to throw it anyway, just for the hell of it. So of course the scripture they stuck into, to say, which was likened to masturbation, I think, was deaden therefore thy body members on unclean things, blah blah blah. I can't remember the whole scripture, but if you're quite fluent, you'll know the scripture, where it's from, whatever. So only that the long and the short of it was that if you succumb to looking after yourself in the genital department, it meant that you weren't deadening therefore your body members, and you were going to be unclean. So clearly masturbation was wrong. And so how to stop masturbation, the youth book, absolutely, brilliant way of doing this. So masturbation is wrong. So what do I do when I'm feeling a bit horny? How to stop the urge to masturbate? Number one, you do not lie on your stomach, because of course if you lie on your stomach when you go to bed, you're lying on your genitals, and that can increase your your arousement, as it were. So don't lie on your stomach. Well, actually, funny enough, I've never lied on my stomach. I've never liked lying on my stomach when I go to bed at all. I've always slept on my back or slept on my, never decided to sleep on my tummy, never done it. I don't know why. Anyhow, but it makes no difference. It makes no difference, to be perfectly blunt with you, when it comes to whether you feel horny or not. But anyway, the advice was not to sleep in your stomach. If you became sexually aroused or a bit horny, or whatever you want to put it, the next advice was to read a book. Read a book, of course. No, that's honestly, it's not going to work. Or pray. Pray's another one. Pray's a good one. Yes, pray. No, that can work out. So the final advice was is to go for a walk. Because if you go for a walk, especially if it's cold outside, and you're feeling a bit turned on, or you've got an erection, you're horny, of course, going outside in that brisk weather, the erection's gone, I feel a lot better, I'm going to go to bed. So I don't know about you, but there are certain areas in the world where after dark you don't want to really be walking out there on your own, especially if maybe you're a young sister. So what they're trying to say is, young sister who's maybe 15 or 16, at 12 o'clock at night, half 12, where she's feeling that she'd like to sort herself out, is supposed to therefore get dressed and walk, go out the door and walk down the street on her own, where potentially she may get raped. So masturbation, thumbs down. Getting raped, acceptable. So in other words, these are the bizarre things that the society is saying that we should, that was their advice at the time, to go out and do that. So you can just imagine young brothers in a certain area just walking down the street at 12:30, the street's completely deserted, and the next thing you just see a guy walking across the pavement, and you look at him and go, alright Tim, masturbation, yeah, as the two brothers recognise that they're both going out for a long walk at 12:30 at night to try and get rid of an erection. What a lot of crap. So anyway, that was their advice how to stop masturbating. But the caveat on the top of that was, of course, what would happen if you succumbed, if you went, oh no, it's too cold out there, it's a bit chilly, I'm not getting my clothes back on, I'm going to sort myself out right now, because so I need to sort myself out. So if you succumb to that, what are the dangers? Well, danger number one, obviously, is because you're sorting yourself out, that means that when you eventually get married and you have to have obviously you want to have sexual relations with your wife, that you will be crap in bed. You'll be absolutely crap. And the reason why you'll be crap in bed is because you spent so many hours sorting yourself out and sorting out your own, your own self purposes and masturbating on your own, that when it comes to trying to satisfy somebody else, you will be crap at it. No doubt about it, you'll be crap in bed. And so therefore your marriage is ruined, because from the ages of like 14 to 21 you masturbated regularly. So when you got married at 22, you'll be crap and your marriage is going to be crap. It's crap. And that's that. And we told you about this, so you're to blame. Well done, we did warn you about it. So that was the first thing that was going to happen. So in other words, what the society is saying is, let's take that, let's just not think about just sex, for instance. Let's think of lots of other things that you have to do when you get married. So in other words, the advice was if you imagine you live on your own and you only have to cook meals for yourself. So at tea time, you're just cooking a meal for yourself on your own, you cook for meals, and the society say to you, sorry young brother, you shouldn't be cooking meals for yourself on your own. Why not? Well, because when you finally get married and you have to then cook meals, provide for somebody else, you'll be so used to making meals on your own that you'll no way be able to adapt to bringing somebody else into the process. Hold on, I live on my own. Why would I cook a meal for two and it's just me? No, you have to do this. So what you're saying is that when I eventually get married, I can't shove on 4 sausages instead of 2. I can't have 2 eggs boiling instead of 1. I can't, you see where I'm going with this? It's just stupid. So basically the society is saying is, no, you can't adapt. Sex, marriage, or all the other comings and goings, or the give and take and the compromising, you cannot function like that because you spent all this long time self-serving yourself in a singular way, and masturbation is going to be the root cause of the ruination of your marriage, despite the fact that people all over the world, witnesses and many non-witnesses, have got married or live together in partnerships, and before they got married, guess what? They did masturbate, but somehow, oh my god, how do they achieve this? They've managed to have a successful marriage or a relationship, and they've successfully managed to have sex despite having married. So I'm afraid that's complete bollocks. Now what the society are now saying is this, the new thought is guess what? If you masturbate, you'll turn gay. That's right, because eventually, obviously, the common sense here makes sense. Eventually you're getting tired of just, sorting yourself out, and you want to bring somebody else into the process. That obviously makes sense, doesn't it? You can just imagine heterosexual men all over the world are sorting themselves, or heterosexual women sorting themselves out, and thinking, I'm a bit bored of this, I wish my mate Tim could join me. I wish to get Tim along, or get Brian involved in this, let's bond over, over this process here. I've lived with blokes in flats, and I'm sure we were all talking at one time or other, and I don't think at any point any of us thought, I wish they could come into the room and sort me out, or I'm sure that never happened. But according to society is, if you do masturbate, you're more likely to turn gay. What a lot of crap. So it's another thing that society are trying to say. First, you'll have a crap marriage, and second, you'll turn out gay if you masturbate. And this is another example of the society trying to micromanage every aspect of your life. They shouldn't even be involved in this. If you want to masturbate, it's up to you. It's a perfectly natural process, and it's something you need to do, because otherwise you'll end up tearing your hair out. You know, especially if you haven't got a girlfriend or anything, or you can't. There's no other way to relieve it. And this ultimately is why Jehovah's Witnesses get married so early, because they're not allowed to masturbate. Because within the eyes of God and the congregation, masturbation's wrong. So the only way to get rid of their sexual frustration is, of course, to get married, which is why so many witnesses get married too young, and why so many witness marriages absolutely fall apart, because you got married purely to get rid of their sexual frustration, only to end up marrying the wrong person, marrying too early, and then they're in a horrible situation that the marriage is absolutely crap, they can't get out of the marriage. Well, that's another story as well of what happens when you're in a crap marriage if you're a Jehovah's Witness, because you are buggered, and it just leads to all sorts of horrible things. It's just as hard to leave the witnesses as it is hard to leave a marriage that's gone wrong in the witnesses. You're just buggered from every side conceivably you can think of. So anyway, let's get back to doing youth book. So I did the youth book, blah, 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 blah. And then I remember that because you have this frankness in dealing with masturbation, the young people that I associated with at the time, we used to talk about it. Oh, none of us masturbated. Clearly, none of the young brothers I associated with at the time, none of us masturbated whatsoever. But one guy called Andrew McCauley, he was a very open guy. He was a good-looking guy, funny enough. He looked like a young Paul McCartney, especially when he had his beard on. He was, and he was a very intelligent guy. He was with IT before IT even been thought of. I used to write to him. We used to go to meet together, the people from Wallasey, go bowling, drinking, whatever. Really good guy. And he then admitted, I think, when we were in a pub one night, why would you do this? But he did admitted that he'd masturbated. Oh my God, I don't believe it. What? You've masturbated? He admitted he masturbated. And so from then on, all the other brothers, when they met, used to say, how's Andrew getting on with his masturbation? Ridiculous. Why are we even talking that way? Because unfortunately that's the way it is. Poor old Andrew, eventually he got a girlfriend who wasn't in the truth, and I used to write to him or met him, and she put her hand in his pants, and he said to her, no, I'm not allowed to put my hand in my own pants, you certainly aren't. But eventually, the desire overcame him or whatever, and in a moment's madness or whatever, he actually had sexual relations with this lassie. And he wrote me a letter out the blue and said, Dear Terry, just to let you know I'm really upset at the moment, but I've just had my judicial committee and they've decided to disfellowship me. And he was really upset. He was, you could actually feel like, the tears dropping from his eyes when he talked about disfellowshipped in his letter. And that was the last communication I had, because of course I couldn't write back to him because he was now disfellowshipped. He was out and he never did come back. And bizarrely, going back to getting married too early, he had a younger brother who got married unbelievably at 16. He met this lassie, I can't even mind his name, met this lassie, got married at 16, and when I heard they get 16, I actually says, well, why are you getting married so young? And he says, well, we've had our lives. I'm thinking, you're 16. He was like maybe 3 years younger than me. I thought, my goodness, I'm not ready for getting married yet, and he's getting married to this lassie. And needless to say, they got married because obviously, going back to it, you can't masturbate, and you definitely can't have sex until you get married. So this young couple got married. Needless to say, the marriage didn't work out. She eventually ran away with a ministerial servant, I believe. I think she was a pioneer. A lot of gossip in the congregation. Imagine a servant running away with a pioneer. And of course, Andrew's brother was absolutely, completely devastated. He was heartbroken. And I think bizarrely he started smoking. He found it hard to cope, and of course, you know what happened next? The elders disfellowshipped him as well. And the last time I saw either of those is I was with our Carl, my cousin Carl. We going to Liverpool for the day. I got onto the station, the platform station at Birkenhead, Trammy or wherever it was. And I got into the train, I sat down in this empty carriage, and lo and behold, in front of me was Andrew and his brother. And I just looked at them. Because they were disfellowshipped, I thought, oh, I can't speak to them, this is a horrible situation, and I walked straight off the train, walked along the platform and got another carriage, and our Carl saying, what'd you do that for? And I says, those two are disfellowshipped. I hate myself that I did that, I had to do that, and I hate myself even more that I did too, because really I should have just spoken to them and said, how's it going, blah blah blah, but I didn't, because, well, it's like you can't speak to somebody who's no longer a witness in that scenario. So, I don't know how they've got on, and I hope they've got on with their lives and managed to, you know, still leave a decent life. I'm sure that they're better for it. So in my own circumstances, I'll just explain that something happened to me, and this is why, you know, I feel quite, you know, that this should be mentioned, is because I remember once that I did succumb one night. I did succumb when I went to bedroom. I felt so utterly worthless and helpless and unloved and sinful that I actually thought of killing myself. Bizarrely, I'd given into masturbation, and next to my bed was a long bass string. I think it was the E string, which is the strongest one, and I actually put it into a loop and put it round my head. I was actually thinking of contemplating killing myself. It's stupid. I was maybe 19 at the time, or 18 or whatever it was. And I only thought about doing this because I felt so unworthy, and I just thought, how can I go on with my life when I flipping can't even stop myself masturbating? Ridiculous. I know, and I've told the story to people before and says, oh, well, you took a ridiculous stance on this, you overreacted, but that's how shit I felt about myself at the time, and that's the way the witnesses do. They just feel as though you can never ever make the grade, you're never ever good enough. In something as simple as stupid that they shouldn't get their noses in, that's how I felt, and that was luckily I didn't. I did a suicide note to Mum. Dear Mum, I can't go on anymore. You've raised a complete wanker. I am a wanker. But in real life, in reality, the wankers were the people who are writing shit like the youth book. So in other words, the governing body are a bunch of wankers, and that's official. Even though probably none of them have ever masturbated. What a lot of crap. So anyway, that's it. That's the story about Jehovah's Witnesses and masturbation. And the reason why it's important is because it just is another example of why I felt so low at that time, because I'd succumbed to that, and it explains why, not maybe in my instances, but there's so many instances that I know of Jehovah's Witnesses, especially young people, who have committed suicide. And you think, why have they committed suicide when they have this great hope of the future, blah blah blah? Because the reason is because they feel so helpless so many times in relation to not being able to live the standard that the Jehovah's Witnesses set. It's an impossible lifestyle to live half the time, and you're constantly failing. And if you're only, if you're struggling, or you're having some mental problems, it's understandable why so many of them do kill themselves when they have this bright hope for the future. But this question about Jehovah's Witnesses and suicide is something that I want to come back to at another time, because I've experiences of people that happen to people I know, and a really horrible case of somebody it happened to who killed themselves because of their mental instability and what happened. But I'll come back to that story another time, because I don't want to do it all in one video. So anyways, that's the story. Comment freely about it if you want to. I don't know any personal experiences, but anyway, that's it. Jehovah's Witnesses and masturbation. There you go. A sticky subject, but I think I managed to get there eventually. So anyway, see you later. Bye bye.